All right, if you're watching this video, I just created this to kind of help explain some of the resources that I sent for Amplify. This will be my third year teaching Amplify. My last 2 years, I was fourth grade. I'm actually moving on up with my class this year, so starting all over. But this is something that I hopefully still plan to use whenever we have a scientific argument or explanation, so on. So I'll just kind of explain the lesson a little bit in the background in this unit because you probably haven't had a chance to teach any of this yet. But this is energy conversions. It's the first unit. And this is just chapter 1, the end of chapter 1, lesson 6. So what they have to do is, I'll just explain the problem because each Amplify unit has a problem and a question that they're trying to solve. So the problem in the first unit is that there's this town, Ergstown, the power keeps going out. And so the mayor is reaching out to the kids as systems engineers and needs their help to get the power back on. So the first chapter question is, what happened to the electrical system the night of the Ergstown blackout? Now, what the kids did see, and you probably can't see this, is that first the power was on, it went out, it came back on. And the one piece of evidence that kids will see is, well, the car's still working. Why aren't the buildings? So in this lesson, students have to complete a scientific argument to explain what they think happened using evidence. It's a very challenging lesson, in my opinion. When we go to the workbook, this is on page 1819. This is their first challenging assignment, like I said. So writing an argument about the blackout. So what they have to do is, here's that question that I had read before. What happened to the electrical system? They have to think about these two claims that were given, decide which claim is best, use all of the evidence that they've learned, and just write this little essay to explain what their evidence is. Which for kids, it's not concrete. They really have to think outside the box. And I know that some students really struggle with that. So I'm just going to show you the resources I gave you, explain what they are, show you how I taught kids to use them to make this a little bit easier. And the whole purpose of all of this is my way of assessing kids and giving them a score, since there is no test or really any way to determine what they do or do not know with a number and a grade. This was my way to come up with that. So you'll notice these two claims, once students talk about it, they'll decide that this is the best claim. Something went wrong with the electrical system. So now I'm going to show you how I use the claim, evidence, and reasoning template to organize their thoughts to answer that question, why they think it was this claim and what their evidence was. So I'm going to actually go into my notebook presentation here. This is something that I created on my own. This was before Amplify put out the PowerPoint slides. So I know that this is a lot different than what you'll see there. You can kind of see what additional things I added in. So maybe doing something like this would be beneficial for you, just changing those PowerPoints a little bit. I'm going to scroll down to this slide. These were the directions on that workbook page. So they had to circle claim 2, support their claim with evidence. We got to try and come up with evidence and use sources to support our evidence. So sources are where they learn their information. The sim on the iPads and computer is going to teach them a lot about electricity and electrical systems. They're going to read a book, their reference book will have a lot of information. And then even looking at pictures like we did in the beginning of this slide, that's where they can get their information. So what evidence do they see here and here and here when the power came back on? That's where they can get their evidence. So what we want to do is organize it into that template. Now, before I do the template, I always like to just write our unit, leave this as like a blank page, and ask them to help me brainstorm anything that we've talked about, just words to give them that vocabulary. So these are actually words that they gave me last year when I was teaching, and I just wrote them on the board. I said, before we get started, we need to be able to have that language to fill out our organizer and write about it. So they were able to give me words like sound energy, thermal energy, light energy, electrical energy. Those were different types of energy we talked about. We talked about the words motion, output, input, an engine, generator, chemical energy, and so on. So these were some words that I had them help me brainstorm. And then I like to keep these posted somewhere so that when they're writing, they can look up there and try and use those words and put them into sentences and organize them. Because I know how challenging that is for kids to take all this information and absorb it. And then when it comes to writing, to get it on paper is a challenge. So this is something extra that I've always done that I encourage you to do. And then I'm just going to show you how to fill out this organizer. So you can see that I split it between claim, evidence, reasoning, and just did one part at a time. So on the paper, students will write their question, what happened to Ergstown's electrical system? Or if we look back at the book, the workbook, what happened to the electrical system the night of the Ergstown blackout? It doesn't really matter how we write that question there. And then for the claim, I encourage students to kind of write this as a sentence. I think, I believe, maybe we would say, I am claiming that. Now remember, our claim was something went wrong with the electrical system. Ooh, sorry, jumping around here. I'm claiming that something went wrong with, and I'm just going to kind of make it a little bit longer. I always encourage students to put this in their own word. Ergstown's electrical system. There's no right or wrong answer. I tell kids, I really help them with the first argument in providing that language, filling out this organizer. Last year, my kids helped me and they said something went wrong with the electrical system. So you can see here, I left it very simple, but I encourage them when they do go to write, they make it a little bit longer, stretch their sentence. So then the evidence part of it, I like to come up and just list 3 pieces of evidence. What are 3 things that you noticed or learned about that tells you something went wrong with the electrical system? So they had said, first, all of the lights went out. Then next, the car lights still worked when there was a blackout. Last, all of the lights came back on at the same time. I always encourage them to use transition words here. First of all, secondly, last, most importantly, so on. So just listing the evidence, we don't need to explain it yet. This just helps them get their ideas out on paper, and now they can take it a step further. So here they are explaining their evidence a little bit further. If they said first all of the lights went out, evidence number 1, I have to match with reason number 1. If all of the lights went out, the system was not using electricity. Next, the car lights still worked when there was a blackout. I know that cars do not get power from the same system. And maybe they want to put another sentence. They could say, I learned that cars have a battery that gives it energy, or so on, or a generator, or whatever they want to put. They can add even another sentence. So you can see how evidence number 1 matches with reason number 1, and so on. So then once I have this sheet all filled out, I know I broke it up in the presentation, but they'll see it all listed out. They're going to put it in order. So if I can just at least put numbers here. Some of my kids that really struggle, I do come and number this for them so they know what order I want them to put their sentences. So this is, what did I do there? This is going to be sentence number 1. Then this is going to be sentence number 2. Sorry, I'm really struggling here. 2. And then this is where kids get confused. They think they just go in order. but this is going to be sentence 3. This is going to be sentence 4. And some of my kids, the first time I point this out to them, they've got it for the rest of the year. Other kids kind of struggle. And I'm really struggling right now too. Okay, so you can see the pattern that it follows. So the only reason why I have it out of order like this is because I wanted them when they were planning just to get their information like this, but then when they go to write, they can organize it. I don't know if I need to number these anymore. I think you get the point at this point. That should be 5, not 6. Oh, struggle bus today. Anyways, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it'll be 7 sentences long. And then I also encourage them on this bottom to write a closing sentence. Now you know, as you can see, so on. So once they get this filled out, they can organize it onto this page and they can write their sentences in order. Now, sometimes I encourage students to get a line sheet of paper, start there, write their 8 sentences. I check it over and then they write their final draft, but obviously you can do it any way you want. This is what it'll kind of sound like when it's put together. So I make sure they indent. In this argument, I'm claiming that something went wrong with the electrical system. First of all of the lights went out. If all of the lights went out, the system was not using electricity. That's the first 3 sentences of their argument. They would still have about 4 or 5 more to write down, and it would make for a good argument. Now, throughout the year, then, I encourage students to fill out that organizer on their own, to come up with their own words. In the beginning, they all kind of sounded the same because I was really helping them. But there are some students who really learn how to be able to take that information, put it in their brain, come up with their own evidence and reasoning, and it really helped them think as scientists. So hopefully this wasn't too all over the place. I just wanted to explain the resources that I had so that they made a little bit more sense. So ask me if you have any more questions.